What happens when a tech mogul tries to publicly humiliate a waitress? But she responds with unshakable grace. If you had been sitting at table 14 that evening, you wouldn't have sensed anything out of the ordinary. Maybe you were swirling, a glass of Merlot, chatting about that new biotech startup downtown, or scrolling your phone between bites of perfectly seared salmon. You probably didn't even notice the waitress with the tight curls pulled back into a bun, the one whose name tag read Amani, as she took an order a few tables over. But that's where it all began. Amani Daniels, 26, wasn't new to the job. She was working another double shift at Barclay and Pine, a high-end restaurant just off Euclid Avenue in downtown Cleveland. She didn't make a scene. She didn't flirt for tips or play favorites. She showed up every shift on time, respectful and composed. That Thursday night, the place was packed. The dining room buzzed with designer suits, high heels, and luxury watches. You could hear the soft clink of forks on fine china and a piano rendition of Stevie Wonder playing low over the speakers. Amani had just finished jotting down a couple's dessert order when a voice behind her cut through the room like a whip. "Excuse me, hello?" She turned, still holding her notepad, offering the kind of smile worn by seasoned servers, tired but gracious. "I'll be right with you, sir," she said gently but clearly. "Don't care who you're with," the man snapped. "I've been waiting 15 minutes. 15! Where's your manager?" Amani blinked. The man at table 9 looked to be in his late 40s, silver hair slicked back, tailored black suit sharp enough to draw blood. His voice was a blade. Across from him, a woman stared intently at her menu as if it held state secrets. "I'll be with you in just a moment." "Sir," Amani repeated, firmer now, still composed. "Thank you for your patience." Then she turned back to her original table, calmly completed the order, and walked off toward the kitchen, not hurried, not flustered. That small choice, finishing what she started instead of folding to pressure, was the spark that lit the fuse. Because the man at table 9, that was Roman Fletcher. Maybe you've heard the name. Tech mogul, billionaire. Built a smart home empire from the ground up in Scottsdale, Arizona. The kind of guy people pretend not to notice when he enters a room. But they always do. And Roman wasn't used to being made to wait, especially not by a black waitress. Back in the kitchen, Amani slid the ticket into the rotation and exhaled, slowly. She'd handled difficult customers before. Some had yelled, one even snapped his fingers at her like she was a bellhop, but something about this man felt different. The way he looked at her, like she was malfunctioning furniture, made her skin crawl. Still, she wasn't about to lose her job over someone else's oversized ego. She grabbed. Amani returned to table 9, carrying 2 glasses of water. "Here you go," she said, setting them down gently. "Thank you for your patience. What can I get started for you?" Roman didn't look at her, not even a glance. He stared straight ahead and said, "Well, look at that. You can talk and carry drinks. Should I applaud?" The woman across from him flinched, her eyes fixed on the table. A few nearby diners paused, forks hovering mid-air. Amani didn't flinch. "Still or sparkling?" she asked, her tone steady and professional. Roman let out a sharp, hollow laugh, one of those exaggerated laughs that felt more like a performance than a reaction. Then he turned, finally meeting her gaze. "You know," he said, voice raised just enough to echo, "if your kind worked half as hard as you complained, you might actually get somewhere." The entire dining room froze. Conversations died. A waiter stopped mid-pour. Somewhere a spoon hit porcelain and no one reached to pick it up. It wasn't just what he said, it was the volume. The smug certainty in his voice, like he knew no one would dare challenge him. But someone would, and it wouldn't be a scream. It would be a single, precise sentence. Amani didn't move right. Away. She stood still, pen in one hand, notepad in the other. Her eyes locked on Roman. Not with anger, not with fear, but with calm observation, like she was studying a file she'd seen 1,000 times. Her lips parted as if she might speak, but she paused, inhaled through her nose, glanced down at the table, then slowly lifted her eyes again. The silence pressed in on everyone. Table 14 was frozen. A man at the bar lowered his glass without sipping. Even the faint piano melody overhead seemed to draw back. Roman tilted his head, smug as ever. "Did you hear me?" he said. "Or should I slow it down for you?" Amani's jaw tightened, barely. "I heard you," she said evenly. "Now I'll ask one more time, sir. Sparkling or still?" Roman scoffed. "Is this how you treat all your customers, or is this just your idea of sassy service?" Sarcasm poured off Roman's words, thick and sticky, spreading across the floor like a spill no one wanted to acknowledge, let alone clean up. Amani felt it creep through the air, heavy and sour. She could sense her manager, Thomas, watching. From the host stand, tense but motionless. He didn't intervene, not yet. Roman's companion, maybe a date, maybe an assistant, maybe someone unfortunate enough to share the table, finally looked up, her voice barely registered. "Roman, maybe we should just—" "No," he snapped, cutting her off, without so much as a glance. "I want to see what kind of training they give their staff. Or did you skip that part, sweetheart? Too busy tweeting about oppression, huh?" There it was, the second slap. Just as loud, just as public. And still, Amani didn't waver. She slowly slid her notepad into her apron pocket and folded her hands in front of her, standing tall, the way her grandmother had taught her to when speaking to someone who'd already decided who you were. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, voice calm and composed. "The kitchen's a bit backed up, but I'll make sure your order gets in. I'd recommend the blackened sea bass tonight. It's fresh." Roman's grin curled cruelly at the edges. "Blackened?" he said, chuckling. How appropriate. There it was again, the third jab. And the line? It wasn't just crossed, it was gone, vanished behind them. Amani didn't react the way most might. She didn't flare with anger or wilt in silence. She simply looked at him. Not in defiance, not with contempt, just with the stillness of someone who had already accepted exactly what kind of man stood in front of her. No twitch of the mouth, no clenched fists, just a quiet, immovable grace, like a tree rooted too deep, to be shaken by the wind. Then she spoke. One sentence, soft, steady, and just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You must be exhausted," she said, eyes fixed on his. "Carrying that much hate into every room. No yelling, no insults, no performance. Just truth, laid bare, and it landed like a slap against stone." The silence that followed didn't feel like shock. It felt like recognition. It felt like realization, like someone had finally flipped on the light in a room everyone had silently agreed to keep dark. Roman blinked. Just once. For the first time all evening, he had nothing sharp to say. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again, empty of words. The woman sitting across from him looked at Amani like she'd just witnessed something sacred and unsettling all at once. At table 14, a man slowly leaned back in his chair, exhaling through his nose. From a corner booth, someone breathed out a low, reverent, "Damn." The tension didn't vanish. It shifted, like the moment just after a storm passes, when the pressure is still there, but the air feels different. But Roman wasn't the kind of man to sit quietly with shame. He was the kind who fought it. And that's when things began to unravel. He blinked again, slower this time, like he was struggling to fully register what had just happened. He opened his mouth as if gearing up for another insult, but the words caught. His usual confidence had lost its polish. It was unraveling at the seams. It's a strange thing, watching someone so used to power suddenly realize they've lost control of the room. "You think that was clever?" he muttered at last, but his voice had changed. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was quiet, uncertain, like he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. "You think saying something poetic makes you smart?" Amani didn't respond. She didn't have to. The room had already answered for her. That's when Thomas, the manager, finally stepped out from behind the host stand. He was tall, bald, and crisp in a shirt so tightly tucked it could have been pressed onto him. He usually stayed out of conflicts, unless someone threw a drink or flipped a plate, but this had crossed a line. He walked up and stood just behind Amani. "Is there a problem here, sir?" he asked, voice calm but firm. Roman straightened in his seat, trying to reclaim his posture, his authority. "Yeah," he snapped. "I've been insulted in your establishment, publicly." Thomas didn't look at Amani. Thomas's eyes stayed locked on Roman. "By whom?" he asked evenly. Roman let out a short, incredulous laugh and gestured toward Amani. "Who do you think?" Thomas didn't flinch. "Because from where I'm standing," he said, "all I saw was a young woman doing her job and a grown man trying to humiliate her for it." The woman sitting across from Roman, her name, as it turned out, was Eliza, glanced at Thomas and gave the smallest of nods. "She didn't say anything wrong." Roman turned on her, stunned. "Oh, so now you're on her side?" "I'm not on anyone's side," Eliza said softly. "I just don't want to be part of whatever this is." And that was when the shift became undeniable, the one where everyone in the room silently agreed. This wasn't just rudeness anymore. This was something uglier. Roman Fletcher hadn't just embarrassed himself. He'd exposed something about himself that not even a billion-dollar empire could cover. "I'm going to ask you to lower your voice," Thomas said. His tone was calm, but unmistakably firm. "Or we can finish this conversation outside." Roman's eyes narrowed. "You kicking me out?" "No," Thomas replied smoothly. "I'm offering you the chance to stay, with respect." That's when Roman cracked. "Oh, give me a break," he snapped. "This whole performative act, everyone in here pretending they're so morally superior just because I said what they were already thinking." A gasp cut through the room. Real. Audible. Roman scanned the restaurant, daring anyone to speak. Up. "Go ahead, play the Saints. Clap for the waitress. Maybe even give her a standing ovation. That'll help you sleep better in your overpriced condos tonight." He laughed again, but this time, the sound was brittle, broken, angry. "I'm not the problem," he hissed. "The problem is people like her, thinking they've earned some kind of moral high ground just for showing up." Thomas took a step forward, his presence filling the space. "Sir?" But Amani spoke before he could finish. Her voice was softer now, measured, but it sliced through the room like a scalpel. "No one's clapping," Amani said quietly. "No one's standing. People are just watching you show them exactly who you are." Roman stared at her like he expected her to take it back. She didn't. He stood slowly, scanning the nearby faces, none offering him the validation he clearly craved. His jaw clenched, grinding tension behind his silence. Then he snatched his blazer off the back of the chair and turned to Eliza. "You coming?" he asked. Eliza rose calmly, picked up her purse, and replied, "I'll call a car." That was it. The final blow. Roman turned and stormed toward the exit. As the doors swung shut behind him, it was as if the pressure in the room finally broke. Not completely, but enough. People exhaled, shoulders dropped, the air lightened. Thomas looked over at Amani. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm fine." He didn't say another word, just gave her a slight nod and walked away. But the moment wasn't over. Not really. Not for Amani. Not for anyone in the room. Because what happened next would echo far beyond those walls. The door had shut behind. Roman like a punctuation mark, a hard stop. For a beat, no one moved. Then the man at table 14 raised his glass slightly toward Amani, not a toast, more like recognition. One by one, people shifted back to their meals, whispered across linen, napkins, the room cautiously returning to normal, but it wasn't quite the same. Because it wasn't just about Roman anymore. It was about how Amani had stood her ground, without yelling, without rage, without losing an ounce of dignity. People remember that kind of grace, especially when they see it unfold in real time. Amani let out a quiet breath, not theatrical, just enough to steady herself. Then she turned back to her section and kept working. She didn't want applause. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to finish her shift and go home. But the energy in the restaurant had shifted, and the tables had too. The atmosphere shifted, both literally and figuratively. As Amani walked by, a woman at table 12 stopped her. "You handled that with so much poise," she said softly. "My daughter's applying for server jobs, and I just hope she can carry herself like that." Amani smiled gently. "Thank you, ma'am. I hope she never has to." Then came the tips. At table 5, a folded $100 bill appeared beneath a plate. Table 8 left a note on their receipt, "For your dignity," and then there was Eliza, the woman who'd sat quietly across from Roman. She moved to the bar, ordered a glass of wine, and waited until Amani had a moment. "Mind if I say something?" she asked. Amani shrugged lightly. "Sure?" Eliza leaned in, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I should have said something. He does that kind of thing all the time, and most people just let it slide." Amani tilted her head just a little. "But you didn't. Not really. Not this time." "No," Eliza admitted, her gaze heavy. "But I let him bring me here. That's something I'll be thinking about tonight." Their conversation was brief. Just a few words, but sometimes the shortest exchanges leave the longest echoes. Near the end of the night, Thomas approached, his face neutral and professional. "I sent in an incident report," he said. "Company policy, but I noted you remained respectful throughout." "Thanks," Amani replied. He hesitated, then added, "He has connections. Might try to spin this. Just a heads up." Amani nodded, unsurprised. Rich men rarely walk away quietly. By the time the kitchen lights dimmed and the last check was paid, the weight of everything that had happened began to settle, not like a sudden crash, but a slow, warm sinking in her chest. She didn't feel victorious. She felt still, like her feet were planted firmly in place, steady and unshaken. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Amani pulled off her apron, grabbed her bag from the back, and slipped out through the employee exit into the alley behind the restaurant. The night air was cool and quiet, filled only with the distant wail of a siren and the occasional hum of tires on pavement. She stood there for a moment, staring up at the dark, indifferent sky above her. Then her phone buzzed. A text from her friend Kayla. "Girl, was that you?" "I just saw it on Twitter." Amani frowned and opened the link. It was a grainy video, clearly filmed from somewhere inside the restaurant. Someone had recorded Roman's tirade and her response, that one sentence. The caption read, "Waitress shuts down Billionaire with one line, dead silence." Hundreds of retweets, thousands of likes, comments flooding in. Amani blinked at the screen, stunned. She hadn't known anyone was recording. She hadn't wanted the spotlight. But now it was impossible to avoid, and this was just the beginning. The internet never lets moments like this fade quietly. By the time Amani got home that night, her phone struggled to keep up. Notifications piled up like falling dominoes, relentless and unceasing. Her Instagram, which she barely used, had soared from a modest 400 followers to nearly 9,000 in less than 3 hours. Twitter was even more intense. Depending on how you looked at it, She tossed her keys on the counter, sank onto the edge of her couch, still wearing her work shoes, and scrolled through the flood of messages. This woman said one line and shut the entire room down. "Queen behavior. Who is she? I want to Venmo her dinner money." This is how you carry yourself, calm, unbothered, dignified. The clip had already made its way to TikTok, Reddit, and even Facebook. Someone had added subtitles. Another had layered it with a gospel choir track. A few people started tagging national news outlets. Amani should have felt flattered, maybe even proud, but instead, she just sat there, watching herself transform into a symbol right before her eyes. Kayla called. "Girl," she said before Amani could even say hello, "you broke the internet." "You know that, right?" Amani mumbled, half laughing. "I didn't ask to." "I know," Kayla replied, "but you didn't have to. That video, that moment, it's real. It's not a skit, not clout chasing. You didn't even know it was being filmed. That's what makes it hit so hard." Amani didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "They're not the ones I work with, though. They're not the ones who will treat me differently tomorrow." Kayla paused. "True, but maybe they'll be the reason someone finally listens." The next morning, the restaurant phone rang before the doors even opened. 3 news stations called. One even offered to pay Amani for a 10-minute interview. A few influencers reposted the clip with hashtags like Grace Under Fire and Say It With Dignity. Thomas pulled Amani aside as soon as she clocked in. "You okay with all this attention?" he asked. "Not really," she answered honestly. He nodded. "Let me know if you need a break." "Will it make a difference?" He hesitated. "To everyone else, probably not. But for you, it might." By lunchtime, someone had started a GoFundMe called Support Amani's Future. In less than 6 hours, it had raised over $30,000. And then, as always, the story reached the other side. Roman. By noon, his PR team issued a formal apology. Mr. Fletcher acknowledges his behavior was inappropriate and deeply regrets any offense caused. He is taking time to reflect and pursue inclusivity training. The public wasn't buying it, not for a second. One comment read, "He regrets getting caught, not what he said." Another wrote, "He's only sorry because she didn't yell. She made him look bad, him look small by staying composed." Roman tried to fight back, posting a lengthy thread about cancel culture and public shaming, but it fell flat, because when the world hears truth spoken quietly, all the noise just sounds like meaningless chatter. By dinner service, Barkley and Pine was fully booked, not for a new dish or special event, but because people wanted to be in the room where it happened. They came to see the woman who didn't flinch. Some whispered their thanks, others simply stared. Amani served every customer as she always did, with professionalism and calm restraint, but her eyes were sharper now. She could tell what was genuine and what wasn't. Halfway through her shift, a well-dressed woman in her 60s stopped her. Kind eyes, white hair. "I taught high school for 32 years, she said. "And I always told my students, speak the truth, but don't let it steal your peace. I saw your video, and I just wanted to thank you for showing how that's done." Amani nodded slowly. "Thank you, ma'am," the woman smiled. "Keep standing, even when your legs shake." That comment stayed with Amani. While the internet had already moved on to its next trending story, something deeper was beginning to shift, something no number of views or likes could measure. 2 days later, the online noise had quieted, but the impact remained. People were still talking, not just about Amani's words, but about what they meant, why they landed so hard, and how a billionaire could be silenced by someone earning $3 to $15 an hour before tips. But Amani wasn't reading comments anymore. She had turned off notifications. What mattered now wasn't how many people saw her, it was how they saw her. That Sunday, between brunch and dinner shifts, the general manager, Sonia Wilkes, called Amani into the office. Sonia didn't waste any time. The corporate office wants to meet, Sonia said. They know everything that happened and want to know if you're open to doing some press. Amani raised an eyebrow. What kind of press? Interviews, a statement from the restaurant, maybe even a sponsorship. A PR firm is involved now. They want to brand you as more than just a voice. They want to make you the voice. Amani leaned back in her chair. That's funny. Nobody wanted to hear me when customers were yelling or throwing menus. Now suddenly my voice is worth money. Sonia didn't argue. She simply nodded once. You're not wrong. Amani looked Sonia in the eye. I didn't do this to go viral. I didn't even want to be part of this story. I know, Sonia said quietly. But you are. There was a pause. Then Amani said, if they want a statement, here it is. Tell them I just want people to treat each other like human beings. Doesn't matter if you've got $10 billion or you're scrubbing dishes in the back. Respect isn't optional, it's basic. Sonia looked at her silently for a moment, then nodded. That's better than anything their PR team could come up with. Later that night, after closing, Amani stepped into the staff alley, holding a to-go container in one hand and her sweater in the other. That's when she saw him, Jamal, the Hessam dishwasher, sitting on a crate, smoking a cigarette and scrolling on his phone. He looked up and grinned. You famous now? Don't start, she said with a smirk. I'm serious, he chuckled. You know how many people reposted that clip with the Buffer goals? I saw one lady say you were the reason she didn't cuss out her landlord yesterday. Amani laughed, short and real. I wasn't trying to be anyone's role model. He nodded. Exactly why you are. Then his smile faded, and his voice dropped. You know, when that man said what he said, I froze. I was in the back, and I heard... I should have spoken up, Jamal said quietly. Should have said something, but I just didn't. Amani looked at him for a long moment. You didn't owe me that, she said. You don't have to save me from something I can handle myself. He tapped the ash off his cigarette. Yeah, but sometimes silence feels like agreement. I get that, she replied. But you're talking now. That counts. They sat in the quiet for a while. No awkwardness, just calm. Then Jamal added, You know what's funny? I've worked here 3 years and never seen a customer get called out like that and actually leave. Not once. You did that without raising your voice. That's power. Amani didn't answer, just nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand something. Respect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet and steady. The kind of quiet that makes people listen because they weren't expecting it. But even as the attention began to fade, something unexpected arrived. Something Amani hadn't asked for and wasn't sure she wanted. The envelope came on a Wednesday, plain white, no return address. It was slid under the staff room door during the lunch rush, and Amani didn't notice it until hours later when she went to grab her phone charger from her locker. At first, she thought it was a bill. Then she saw the name, Amani Daniels, neatly typed across the front. No title, no Ms., just her name. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single page of cream-colored heavy paper, the kind you only get from offices with oak desks and framed degrees. Dear Ms. Daniels, my name is Gregory Alton, legal representative for Mr. Roman Fletcher. I have been asked to reach out on his behalf following the events of last Thursday evening at Barclay and Pine. Mr. Fletcher wishes to offer his formal apology, both privately and, if agreeable, publicly. He is prepared to, the letter continued, offering to meet either in person or to provide a written statement, whichever Amani preferred. The message was extended in good faith, emphasizing full respect for her dignity and her right to choose how to proceed. No legal action was being taken or anticipated. Mr. Fletcher simply wanted to make amends. Amani stared at the letter for a long moment. Her hands remained steady, her chest didn't tighten, but something inside her twisted. Unpleasantly, like sour milk. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. That evening, she sat with Kayla in their favorite corner booth at Miller's Grill in Akron, the kind of place with plastic menus and lemon slices in every glass. No cameras, no whispers. "You going to meet him?" Kayla asked after reading the letter twice. Amani shook her head. "I don't need to look that man in the eye again." "Then what? Ignore it?" "I'm thinking about it." Kayla leaned in. "I mean, if he's really sorry, maybe it's a chance to—" "Kayla," Amani interrupted gently, "this isn't for him. That whole thing wasn't about his redemption. It was about showing everyone what happens when someone with power oversteps and someone without it refuses to back down." Kayla looked down at her plate. "I just don't want them to turn you into a story and forget the person." Amani gave a small smile. Too late for that. A week passed. The GoFundMe had surpassed $70,000. Someone sent her flowers with a card that read, "For standing up without stepping down." A teacher in Kansas messaged to ask if she could show the video to her 9th grade class. A group of young workers from an airport lounge emailed to say, "You reminded us we don't have to take everything with a smile." But the most surprising message came in person. A man walked into Barclay and Pine on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. A man wearing a gray suit, no tie, and glasses slipping down his nose asked for Amani at the front. "I'm here to deliver a statement," he said, "on behalf of Mr. Fletcher." Amani stepped out from behind the counter. "I told your office I'm not interested." "I understand," he replied. "He's not here to pressure you, just to offer something for you to keep if you want it." She hesitated. "What is it?" He pulled out a sealed envelope and handed it over. No strings attached. Mr. Fletcher was quietly making a donation, a full tuition scholarship for 5 students at a training center in East Cleveland, in her name. Amani stared at him. "Why?" he explained. "Your sentence made him realize something, that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's strength. And that maybe if more people learned to listen without speaking, the world might feel less tense." She didn't respond right away. Finally, she said, "Tell him this isn't about redemption. It's about responsibility." The man nodded. He knows he's working on it. In that moment, Amani understood. She hadn't just stood her ground, she'd shifted it. For herself, for those watching, and maybe even for the man who had tried to diminish her. Amani didn't post a long statement. She didn't do a podcast or sign a deal or agree to a reality show someone had randomly emailed her about. She didn't want to be the face of something she hadn't asked to be part of. But 2 weeks later, one afternoon, she stood in front of about 20 teens at a youth center in East Cleveland, one of the very centers that Roman's donation had helped fund. Some wore hoodies, some chewed gum, a few scrolled their phones until she began to speak. Most of the time she said, "You don't get to control how people see you." Some of the kids looked up. "Some people will judge you by your clothes. People will judge you first by your skin, your shoes, your job, before they even look into your eyes. And you won't always get the chance to change that," she said, pausing to breathe. "But what you can control is what you say and how you say it. Sometimes that speaks louder than shouting." The room fell quiet. "I wasn't brave because I wanted to be," she continued. "I was just tired of being talked down to, tired of being told to swallow it. And one day, I just didn't." A girl in the front raised her hand. "What happened after you said that line?" Amani smiled. "Silence. The kind you can almost feel. The kind that makes a man with all the money in the world realize he can't buy back respect." A few heads nodded. Someone muttered from the back, "That's cold," like it was a compliment. Amani ended her talk on her own terms, just as she always wanted. "If you remember anything from this," she said, "don't remember my job, or the man I was talking to, or even what I wore. Remember this. Sometimes, your calm is your greatest strength. Your quiet is your fight. Your dignity is the line, and no one gets to cross it without your permission. Afterward, she stepped out into the parking lot alone. No applause, no cameras, just her. The sun was setting slowly, casting soft light. She sat on the hood of her car and looked up at the sky, not waiting for anything, just breathing. Her phone buzzed again, but she ignored it. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't just reacting to the world around her, she was shaping her own. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it and who she refused to become in the process. If you ever find yourself in a room where someone tries to make you feel small, remember this. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight fire with fire. Your stillness, your clarity, they can be the loudest voices in the room. So when the moment comes, speak like it matters. Stand like you belong. And never forget, respect isn't something you ask for, it's something you carry.